The New Babylon, Chapter 4. The team walked up the steps to the church. The tower signaled the entry in the lobby, and the door swung open. Pastor and his team walked in first, followed by John Allen. Kevin walked in last. Without saying a word, he marched straight into the back office. The back office was the church library before the collapse. It was now used as an operations command post, so essentially, it was Kevin's office. He slammed the door shut behind him. Nobody in the lobby or sanctuary spoke a word. You could hear a pin drop. As Kevin sat at his desk, staring out the partially shuttered window, a faint knock was heard on the door. "Not now," Kevin announced. The response came back. Kevin? It's me, Isaac." "Come on in, Pastor," Kevin said. Isaac Rubens opened the door and entered the operations office. "Kevin, I'd like to talk to you about what just happened." Kevin interrupted Pastor Rubens and firmly stated, "Yes, Pastor, I want to talk about it too. Believe me, I want to talk about it. That's exactly why I think we should wait till later, till I've had time to process my thoughts on it, so don't say anything that I'll regret." Pastor Rubens looked down, and the room fell silent for a moment. "Kevin, I know what you're feeling. I know you're upset at me for pushing the issue of saving that girl. I think, for as long as we have known each other, we can speak to each other freely and frankly." Kevin shot up out of his seat. "Fine, Isaac. You want to do this now? Let's do it. What happened today is unacceptable. You put me in this role because of several reasons. You know my background, you know my training. You trust me, and you trust my judgment. When we first talked about it, I told you the only way I would accept this position would be if I had free rein to run things my own way. We talked about the command structure. You know I love you and respect you. You know that I recognize your authority as pastor and as leader of this group. But today, you used that authority to encroach upon my command of this security detail. I knew, and I told you, that we should not have gotten involved, that we should just stand fast and observe and engage only if and when that security threat crossed over into our perimeter. But because you used your authority to question my decision, one of my men has a bullet wound in his shoulder right now. He will be out of commission for at least a week. What if he was killed? It was unnecessary, and it was careless." Pastor Rubens looked down again briefly, and then looked up at Kevin. "Kevin, I hear you. I understand what you're saying. But at the end of the day, we are who we are. I am who I am. When I see someone in distress, someone whose life is in danger, I can't just turn away. I can't just ignore it." Kevin rubbed his eyes. "Yes, Isaac, that's exactly why I run the security. Do you think it's easy for me to stand down and watch something like this happen? Do you think it was easy for me today to make the call to let that happen, knowing we might be able to help her? It's not easy at all. I have to answer to God for the choices I make as a person, as a child of God. I have to lay my head on my pillow at night and close my eyes too. Do you think that stuff won't invade my sleep? Do you think it won't change me or damage me? Let me assure you, it will. But I make those choices, those hard choices, because of the responsibility I have to the people in our group, the responsibility I have to keep those people safe. And as harsh or as cold as it seems, if I have to make the choice to let some stranger die Or to come home and tell the wife of one of my men that he died? He looked down at his desk and let out a deep sigh. You know which one I choose. Then, after a brief moment of silence, he looked back up at Pastor Rubens. You know which one I will choose, every single time. Now, at the end of the day, if you can't live with that, then you're free to unburden me of this responsibility and to find a new security chief to run things here. Isaac Rubens looked Kevin in the eyes. No, Kevin, I stand by my initial decision. I know I chose the right man for the job. I know I can't expect you to change. But at the same time, I can't change either. But I will promise to try to not interfere with your leadership of the security team in the future out in the field. Kevin nodded. Isaac smiled. The two men hugged. Pastor Rubens stood up. Will you come with me to go check on Jacob? I think it's important that we go out there together. Show a united front and all that. Kevin nodded. Yes, I agree, Isaac. Let's go, brother. The two men walked out into the sanctuary and out through the lobby and down the steps that led to the street. They walked up the block, back up toward Pastor Rubens's house, which housed the infirmary on the second floor. When they got inside, they walked up the stairs, and Kevin was greeted by his wife, Sarah. Sarah was an emergency room trauma nurse prior to the collapse. Together with their daughter, Grace, they ran the infirmary. Grace was 22 years old and a certified EMT. How's Jacob doing, honey? Kevin asked Sarah. Sarah pulled him aside. The bullet went straight through the shoulder and out pretty cleanly. There was some minor muscle damage, and he's lost a significant amount of blood. But barring any complications, he will be fine. But he won't be running and gunning for a while. I want to keep him in here overnight to watch for fever and other signs of infection. If all goes well tonight, he can go home tomorrow. But again, he's going to need to come out of duty rotation for at least a couple weeks. Kevin scratched his head. We really can't spare the position on the team right now, babe. I need him in rotation. Sarah looked at her husband. Well, in an emergency, he could do tower duty, but absolutely no ground pounding, Kevin, and only in an emergency. He really needs to be out a couple weeks. Pastor was standing beside Kevin and heard the whole exchange. Just then, Olivia, Jacob's wife, came bounding up the stairs. Sarah, where's Jake? Is he okay? What happened? Is he going to be okay? Sarah filled her in on his medical condition. Olivia looked over at Kevin. What happened? How did this happen? As Kevin began to speak, Pastor Rubens stepped forward and took her by the hand. Olivia, this should not have happened. It's all my fault. Please, come with me. Let's get a cup of coffee, and I'll tell you everything. I'll answer any questions that you have. Olivia nodded her head and began to cry as Pastor Rubens led her into a sitting room that served as a lounge for the infirmary. Sarah looked up at Kevin. What's going on, honey? What did Isaac mean when he said it was all his fault? Kevin took her hand. Honey, I'll tell you everything later. I really need to go debrief the team and do the after-action stuff. I need to tell them how Jacob's doing. Can I catch up with you later at home? Yes, she answered, as she gave him a broad smile. Grace is on overnight duty tonight. I'll be home around 8 o'clock if all stays quiet. Kevin put his hands together. I'm praying for quiet, babe, he said, as he smiled and kissed his wife goodbye. As he walked toward the stairs, he looked into the lounge and saw Pastor sitting with Olivia. He stood there for a moment as he listened to Pastor Rubens tell Olivia about the girl and his decision to try to help her. He watched as Olivia, sobbing, shook her head as if giving her approval for Pastor's decision, telling him it was okay and that he was wrong to blame himself. Kevin Fawkes stared ahead blankly as he looked inside himself. Was he the only one who thought that interfering to save the girl was a foolish move? Then he realized something. He knew why his dear friend had chosen him to lead the security team. He knew he was right to want to let the girl fend for herself and not intervene to try to save her. That was his role in the group. Even if everyone else thought he was a monster for making that choice, he knew that it was the right one. That is what made him different from the rest of the group. That was what made him the right choice for the job that he did there. He also knew that his friend, Isaac Rubens, knew it too. Suddenly, he felt alone. The most alone that he had probably ever felt. Was it possible for a man in his position, and a good Christian man of morals and character, to walk inside the same pair of boots? Could he love the Lord and devote his life to serving and worshiping God, and at the same time sit back and watch as something utterly horrifying happened before him without lifting a finger to stop it? Could he turn his humanity on and off at will? Then the scariest of all thoughts entered his mind. If it was not possible for these two men to exist in one person, what would become of his humanity? Which man would win the struggle? Deep inside himself, he knew that he could and would make those hard choices, as and if needed. Would that cause him to lose his humanity? Would it be chipped away from him, piece by piece, until all that was left of it was a faint remnant of his former self? A haunting piece of his once complete soul, torturing and tormenting him from within? Then he thought of Isaac Rubens, the man who had been his dear friend since childhood, the man who he was so upset with not an hour before. As he thought of him, he realized something else. He knew that Isaac Rubens would be there with him to provide the balance, to help keep that humanity in check. He smiled as he also realized that his dear friend had already known all of this too. That Isaac knew when he chose him to lead the security team that when he needed to make those hard choices, that his friend would be there to provide the balance. He rubbed his eyes and walked down the stairs and onto the street. In the quiet evening, he walked alone toward home.